Welcome to the family. In this video, we will take a look at one of the greatest characters of all time. A character who represents the old ways, with a mindset that is all about family, tradition, culture, and let's not forget about money, with the consolidation of power. I'm talking about Tony Soprano. From the hit television show, The Sopranos, we are going to take a look at 3 quotes from Tony that exemplify who he was underneath the power. Not just the boss of a family of gangsters. We have seen that countless times before, but the man who would come out to get the paper in his bathrobe, drinking straight from the orange juice carton. Looking at a character like this serves 2 purposes. We get to dive deep into one of our favorite personalities, and we also get to see what made him so special, why he was so respected in his frame. Yes, he might be a fictional character, portrayed by a very real actor, but on this channel, the only time we disregard reality is when we take a dive into the abyss to look at our favorite characters, fictional or not, throughout time and space, and in doing so, we can learn about ourselves in the process. Because if you cannot learn from the lives and words of vaunted characters, then the book of your life will always remain closed. Who was he? Tony Soprano, above all else, was a man of the family. And when I say family, I am talking about 2 sides of the same coin. He's part of a long-standing tradition called La Cosa Nostra, or this thing of ours. I am sure everyone is familiar with a headstrong group of immigrants coming to a land, not being able to get the same opportunities as the native population, and taking their destiny into their own hands by relying on the ways and traditions of their homeland. Yes, this tradition might involve murder, extortion, and flouting yourself in the face of the law, but it also represents a sacred pact amongst brothers, wives and children. Men who swear this type of oath often find themselves torn between their biological families and their adopted families, who they have grown up in the neighborhood with. Sharing a storied history of rich cultural heritage, we cannot ignore the violence that happens with characters like these, but that is not our focus. We are here to learn from a man that had the respect of dangerous men. A man who controlled an ancestral venture which was valued in the millions, but with the money and respect came death and destruction. But that is what they sign up for. They were born and bred for this lifestyle. It has been ingrained in them since they were children, watching the elders of the neighborhood drive fancy cars, get all the women, and live the life most youth dream of. The word family takes on great responsibility with a character like this. It can be said that human beings are creatures of pure hypocrisy. As long as it lines up with our own values, we can say one thing and do another. Say it is all for family, but do almost everything to lead to the destruction of that family, in hopes of gaining financial clout and highest respects. This is not a judgment, because we do not do that here. It is simply a truth that we must be aware of when looking at such a character, in hopes in finding some measure of value in his behavior that we can use to improve our own lives. Now, let us dive in with our first quote. I find I have to be the sad clown, laughing on the outside, crying on the inside. This quote sums up the man. This is why I made it a point to preamble the duality of such a lifestyle. We can see that, as with most of us, our words have one truth, but there is always an underlying meaning just beneath. Words often serve as a facade, a mirage, a front to give others and ourselves the confidence to survive any situation. Gripped by panic attacks from events of a turbulent childhood growing up around the business, he finds himself talking to a psychiatrist, which goes against everything he stands for, revealing secrets to a stranger, which is a constant source of strain for him, knowing he could be killed just for this reason alone. He knows that he feels bad about certain things he does and how he makes his living, that his children would think less of him as they knew the violence and degradation that provides food to satiate their appetites. He does not seem like a complete sociopath, which is what many of these men display in order to be able to have the dead eyes, capable of doing such work. Like his capo Paulie Walnuts Gualtieri, Tony genuinely feels remorse for certain situations and especially for animals more than humans. This quote hits hard, because it shows that Tony doubts himself like we all do. His conscience is pinging at him with this quote, always having to portray the strong, dignified leader, while crying for the deeds he has done on the inside. He cannot show these feelings, in fear of being thought of as soft or lacking, because he has feelings of remorse for ill deeds. This shows that he is human, and adds a great depth to a character who would normally just be a one-note hardened gangster we have all seen before. The fact that Tony suffers with these pangs of guilt, takes Prozac, sees a psychiatrist, indulges in affairs with mistresses, overeats and drinks, and has tendencies towards violent outbursts. This shows that, if a man of his frame and position can do so, then we all can take the necessary steps to heal our outward portrayals to the world. Number 2. We're soldiers. Soldiers don't go to hell. These words show the beliefs held by many who take up a cause fraught with destruction. Tony looks at himself like a Roman general, leading his men to battle, and we all know that the deeds done in war do not count. Right, wrong, we all have a choice in my opinion, and just using the excuse as if a cog in a wheel to obfuscate responsibility for a horrible deeds is the way of great denial. These words take on new meaning when looked at in general terms. If all soldiers feel this way, that they can do anything in the name of war, and they are simply not judged the same, meaning all responsibility is off their shoulders, this to me is simply justification for one's actions. For example, if one's homeland is being invaded by an outside overwhelming force, and a man takes up his weapons in defense of his family and motherland, then that man is truly a soldier, and I agree with Tony in this case. Then the umbrella of war can give some protection to waylay the guilt felt. But if you are taking the fight to others, or fighting on behalf of an individual you know to be immoral and evil, then you are not the same. You are worse than that man. It can be said that the cogs control all war. If a good man sits back and does nothing in the face of evil, then we all have no chance. And if that same man listens to the words and orders of charismatic, evil men, giving them orders, then they can say the excuse, "I was just following orders." It is not the dictators of the world that have the power. It is the everyday man who signs up to fight, who follows the Pied Piper right to his own death. If moral men simply say no, then that leader just becomes another powerless eccentric, more flawed usually than the rest of us. It is the soldiers, machines of war, the instruments of battle, that do the fighting at the behest of evil men. Now, it is much easier said than done to say no when all of your friends and neighbors are supporting a cause, and your culture supports it. So in essence, you go against the leader's words, you go against your own people, so the nuances are not lost. In a world where conflict is escalating on all levels, we see many bored, angry men sign up to cause chaos because their reasons justify the cause. I will always thank every man who serves his country with distinction, who protects the rest of us while we sleep. But when that same man takes up his arms to fly around the world and only add to the chaos, not dissipate it, then that cause is lost on me. So this quote at its core is a certain belief system that keeps Tony's guilt and remorse from bubbling over the top. It is his justification that he is a soldier in a war, defending his homeland righteously from oppression, so his soul is clean, and heaven awaits. Denial and delusion are powerful tools in the battle against succumbing to your own inner turmoil. We must always seem to ameliorate, not exacerbate. Number 3. Every decision you make affects every facet of everything. It's too much to deal with almost, and in the end, you're completely alone with it all. This quote signifies how Tony truly feels about being boss of this family. He feels the weight on his broad shoulders, that heavy is the head that wears the crown. Everyone comes to him to solve their problems, he takes the brunt. When things go good, he gets the credit. When things go bad, he takes all the arrows. And this is what any man in a leadership position feels, a truly thankless job. But lest we forget all the spoils that come from being on top. So maybe all the money and clout, lullaby his feelings of apprehension to sleep. He tells his consigliere, Silvio Dante, that he is under immense strain, that no one will ever understand his plight, having to look out for all his underlings, solve their problems, while at the same time placating and playing mediation to all the other crew and families, doing his best to keep the peace, while not looking weak at the same time. Being on top comes with great spoils, but it also spoils everything. Most people do not find this out until they reach the top position. Most of us do anything we can to climb the proverbial ladder, but once we actually reach the top, we can see that in some cases, it is not all it is cracked up to be. The pressure is immense, but so are the rewards. I find it highly dependent on the personality of the person, because many fold under pressure, but some rise to the occasion. But no matter who you are, you feel the strain, as if you were Atlas, and the weight of the world is on your shoulders. This was a look at the words and sentiments of the New Jersey Don, Tony Soprano. I believe life is about learning from others' mistakes and our own, and whether those characters are fiction, myth, or legend, it does not matter, because their words survive the test of time, and people take them as reality. We can learn from Tony that it is important to live our truth, not suppress it, because then it manifests itself in negative ways, as in the plethora of Tony's negative behaviors. We see the appeal of this character, because he is not just a hardened mob boss, he is also a normal human, who lives a relatively normal home life, with his wife Carmela, and his two children, Anthony Jr. and daughter Meadow. What we love is, it is not all just action all the time. This series showed us another side, the side we all know exists, but is not exciting enough to portray, where Tony can just sit watching TV, eating a big bowl of ice cream, wearing shorts at his barbecue, with sausage links draped around his shoulders, also having a playful nature with the women in his life, and having encounters with animals that bring out his sensitive side, like when the family of ducks left his swimming pool and he became hyper-emotional. These figures may be touted to an almost legendary status, and this is why The Sopranos is one of a kind, because it shows the two-family dichotomy better than any other source. Tony loves his wife and children and would die for them, but at the same time, he took an oath to his brothers to put this way of life above them. So this type of struggle between our better angels and our darker selves show that sometimes we cannot have everything we want if we do it in a way which tears apart how we are built. If we are a moral human being, then we cannot commit atrocities without some form of anesthesia to help us carry the weight of these dirty deeds. Tony tries to live this dualistic life better than anyone, something I think we all struggle with, the side that wants it all, to take the world, and would do anything to reach our ambitions, or the side that is content with what we have, being a family man, a moral individual. Thank you for watching. This is merely an exposition on one of the most interesting characters television has ever produced, and in order to dive in, we must be open to exploring themes and opinions that cause strife, but remember to keep an open mind, because you never know when another person's thoughts can spark a fire within you. So I ask you, have you got yourself a gun?